Nobody used the Deathworld channel. It sat at the far edge of the galactic communication spectrum, like a locked door that everyone knew about but nobody wanted to open. Every species in the Galactic Union had heard the stories. Worlds where gravity crushed bones, where the air burned lungs, where the creatures at the top of the food chain had clawed their way through millions of years of endless violence just to stand upright. The channel existed for one reason only. When everything else failed, when death was the only thing left on the schedule, you could call the monsters. Suli had never imagined she would be the one to press that button. She stood in the communications bay of the Quiet Mercy, a Livari medical frigate carrying 40 crew members and enough pharmaceutical cargo to supply 3 colony worlds. The Livari were not fighters. They were healers. Their bodies were thin and light, their skin covered in bioluminescent cells that shifted color with every emotion. They could read sickness in a patient's blood chemistry by touch alone. They were the most respected medical species in the known galaxy, and right now, 3 of them were already dead. The Rosk had come out of nowhere. 3 marauder ships had dropped from faster-than-light travel and opened fire before Doran, the captain, could even finish his morning report. The first volley had torn through the lower cargo bay. The second had killed the shields. The third had punched a hole in the engine room that was now leaking radiation into the ventilation system. Suli watched through the observation screen as the lead Rosk ship extended its docking clamps toward the Quiet Mercy like the jaws of some deep space predator. The Rosk were reptilian slavers. They targeted medical ships because Livari fetched enormous prices on the black market. Warlords, crime lords, and corrupt governors all wanted personal Livari physicians. A healthy Livari could sell for more than a warship. Doran stood beside her, his skin flickering between pale blue and deep violet, fear and resignation. He had already tried negotiating. The Rosk commander, a scarred veteran called Grull, had responded by broadcasting footage of his weapons powering up. "We have maybe 20 minutes before they breach the main corridor," Doran said quietly. "The Union patrol ships are 9 hours away. No one is close enough to help." Suli looked at the communication panel. The standard distress frequencies were already broadcasting. Somewhere, a Union dispatch officer had logged their signal and assigned it a priority number. That priority number would sit in a queue while the Quiet Mercy was torn apart. "There is one channel left," Suli said. Doran's skin went white, pure blank white. It was the Livari color for dread. "No," he whispered. "Captain, we are going to die here. Or worse, we are going to be sold. You know what lives on the other end of that frequency. You have read the same files I have. Creatures from a world where the ground shakes hard enough to flatten cities, where the water rises and swallows coastlines, where the dominant species hunted everything on their planet to extinction and then started hunting each other. I know what the files say. Then you know that calling them might be no different from inviting a second predator to the feast." Suli placed her hand on the panel. Her fingers trembled. The glow under her skin was a deep, steady gold. It was the Livari color for desperate hope. "The files also say something else," she said. "They say the Deathworlders have a word in almost every one of their languages, a word that has no direct translation in Galactic Common. The closest meaning is someone who chooses to run toward danger to protect others. They do not do it for payment. They do not do it for status. They do it because something inside them will not allow them to walk away." Doran stared at her. "They call these people heroes," Suli said. The ship shuddered. The docking clamps had locked on. Somewhere below, metal screamed as the Rosk began cutting through the hull. Doran closed his eyes. His skin cycled through every shade of fear the Livari body could produce. Then it settled on a color Suli had never seen him wear before, a calm, steady white with the faintest pulse of gold underneath. "Acceptance. Send it," he said. Suli opened the Deathworld channel. The frequency was old. It had been established decades ago when the first Deathworld species had made contact with the Union. It carried a simple automated warning in 400 languages. Anything that responds to this channel originates from a Class 12 hostile environment world. Proceed with extreme caution. She recorded the message. Her voice was steady despite everything. This is the Livari medical frigate Quiet Mercy. We are under attack by Rosk marauders. Our crew of 40 is being taken captive. We have wounded. We have dying. We are broadcasting on the Deathworld channel because no one else can reach us in time. If anyone hears this, we need help, please. She transmitted it. The signal raced outward at the speed of light, bouncing off relay stations and cutting through the empty space between star systems. Then she sat down on the floor of the communications bay and wrapped her arms around her knees. Below, the sound of Rosk boots echoed through the corridors. The Livari crew was gathering in the medical bay, holding each other, their combined glow painting the walls in shades of terror and sorrow. Sully stared at the communication panel. The Deathworld channel indicator pulsed quietly, waiting. Somewhere out in the dark, something heard her. 600 light-seconds away, a coffee mug floated through the air in zero gravity before a large hand caught it. Pyotr Volkov squeezed the mug and took a long sip, his boots maglocked to the floor of the Nomad's bridge. The survey ship was small, ugly, and built like a battering ram. It had been designed to drill into asteroids, map unstable moons, and survive the kind of geological disasters that would tear a normal vessel apart. It carried no military weapons. What it carried was 14 humans, a cargo hold full of mining explosives, and the stubbornness that came standard with every member of the species. The Deathworld channel alert hit the comms panel with a sharp tone that made everyone on the bridge look up. Rena Osai, the captain, was reviewing mineral survey data on her tablet when the sound cut through the quiet hum of the ship. She set the tablet down slowly. In her 10 years with Earth's naval forces and another 5 with the Galactic Survey Corps, she had never once heard the Deathworld channel activate. "What is that?" asked Adiz Akafer, the chief engineer, pulling herself toward the comm station. "Someone is calling us," Pyotr said. He was already pulling up the signal. His face changed as he listened. The lightness left his expression. Something harder took its place. He played the message on the bridge speakers. Sully's voice filled the room. The fear in it needed no translation. The words were simple enough. Medical ship, under attack, slavers, 40 crew, dying. "Please." The bridge went silent. 14 humans in a tin can floating through empty space, and every single one of them felt the same thing at the same time. It was not a decision that needed debate. It was older than language, older than civilization. It was the thing that made humans run into burning buildings and dive into floodwaters and stand between strangers and danger without being asked. Rena looked at her crew. "You heard it. We are not military. We have no weapons worth the name. That ship is 600 light-seconds away and surrounded by 3 Rosk marauders. If we go, some of us might not come back." Pyotr cracked his knuckles. "So we vote." Every hand went up. Not a pause, not a hesitation. The ship's cook, a quiet woman named Fumiko Tanaka who had never held a weapon in her life, raised her hand first. "Adiz," Rena said, "I need everything the engines have." Adiz was already moving. She rerouted power from the geological scanners, the external sensors, and half the lighting grid. The Nomad was not fast, but it was tough. She pushed the reactor to a level the manual specifically said to never push it to, and the ship groaned as it surged forward. In the small medical bay, Haru Sato opened every database file he could find on Livari physiology. He had trained to treat humans. Livari were a different matter entirely. Their blood was copper-based. Their bones were hollow. A dosage that would barely affect a human could kill a Livari in seconds. He began recalculating every medication in his kit, his hands steady even though his heart was pounding. Benny Akpen, the head of the three-person security detail, opened the weapons locker. Inside were 6 sidearms, 2 stun rifles, and a collection of cutting tools designed for slicing through rock. He stared at the inventory for a long moment, then started handing things out. "We are really doing this with mining gear," said one of the geologists, a young woman named Rosa Gutierrez, as she accepted a plasma cutter. "We are really doing this," Benny confirmed. He loaded his sidearm and tucked a geological hammer into his belt. It was meant for breaking stone samples. It would work just fine on other things. The Nomad burned through space at a speed it was never designed to maintain. Alarms chimed softly as hull stress indicators crept toward yellow. Adiz silenced them one by one with the calm focus of someone who had kept engines running through asteroid storms and solar flares. Rena stood at the center of the bridge, watching the distance counter shrink. She pulled up everything the Union database had on Rosk Marauder ships. They were fast, well-armed, and crewed by soldiers who had been raiding since before humans had reached the stars. 3 ships meant roughly 90 Rosk fighters against her 14 humans. She did the math, then she threw the math away. Math had never stopped humans before. "Peter," she said, "how many mining charges do we have left from the asteroid survey?" 24 high-yield thermal charges, enough to crack a small moon. "Can you make them fly?" Peter smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a man who had spent 20 years blowing things up professionally and had just been given permission to be creative. "Give me 15 minutes, he said. He disappeared into the cargo hold. The sounds of welding and swearing echoed through the ship. Adiz sent Rosa down to help him. Between the 3 of them, they turned 24 mining charges into something that was not quite a torpedo and not quite a bomb, but was absolutely going to ruin someone's day. Rena opened a channel to the Quiet Mercy's frequency. There was no response. Either their comms were down or the Rosk had already taken the bridge. She closed the channel and looked at the view screen. The stars stretched ahead in cold, infinite silence. "Hold on," she whispered to no one in particular. "We are coming." The Rosk had a saying among their kind: "If the prey is not screaming, you have not started properly." Inside the medical bay of the Quiet Mercy, 37 Livari huddled together. 3 were already dead. The survivors pressed close, their bioluminescent skin casting shifting waves of violet and pale blue across the walls. The colors of grief and terror mixed together until the room looked like the inside of a dying star. Grull walked among them like a butcher inspecting livestock. He was tall for a Rosk, heavily scarred, with one eye replaced by a mechanical implant that glowed a dull red. He had been raiding ships for 30 years. Medical vessels were his specialty. The cargo was valuable, but the crew was worth more. He grabbed Tavi, the youngest healer on the ship, by the arm and held her up. She weighed almost nothing to him. Her skin flashed white with pain and terror. "This one is young," Grull said to his second-in-command. "Young healers learn faster. They adapt to new masters more easily. She will fetch a premium." Doran stepped forward. His body trembled, but his voice held. "Release her. Take the cargo, take everything in the hold, but leave my crew." Grull dropped Tavi and turned to face the Livari captain. He leaned down until his scarred face was inches from Doran's glowing skin. "I will take the cargo," he said, "and I will take the crew, and if you speak again I will take your tongue first." Doran went silent. His skin dimmed to almost nothing. It was the Livari equivalent of a scream trapped inside. Suli knelt beside Tavi and pulled her close. The young healer buried her face against Suli's shoulder. Around them, Rosk soldiers moved through the ship, cataloging everything of value and marking each Livari with a scanner tag on their wrist. Inventory numbers. That is what they were now. Then the ship shook. It was not the gentle vibration of a docking clamp adjusting. It was a deep, bone-rattling impact that knocked 3 Rosk soldiers off their feet and sent equipment crashing from the shelves. The lights flickered. An alarm began howling from somewhere inside the Rosk vessel attached to their hull. Grull snarled and activated his communicator. "Report." The response from his bridge was panicked. "Commander, an unknown vessel just detonated multiple explosive devices in our sensor corridor. Our flanking ships are blind, and the unknown vessel is... Commander, it is ramming us." "It is what?" "Ramming. It has driven directly into our port hull. The breach is massive. We are detecting atmosphere loss on decks 4 through 6. Grull stared at his communicator as if it had insulted him. No sane species rammed another ship. It was suicide. It was the kind of tactic used by creatures that did not understand the concept of self-preservation. A second impact shuddered through the connected vessels. Then a third sound joined in. Not an explosion, not a weapon. It was the high-pitched scream of metal being cut at incredible speed. Something was carving through the Rosk hull from the inside. On the other side of that hull, Pyotr Volkov pressed a plasma-cutting torch through Rosk armor plating like a hot knife through wax. Behind him, Benny Akpen led a team of 5 humans through the breach the Nomad had torn open. They moved fast, their boots pounding on deck plates that rattled under their weight. The Rosk ship operated at 0.7 standard gravity. For the Rosk, this was comfortable. For humans who had evolved on a world with full standard gravity and regularly trained in conditions far worse, it was like moving through a dream. They were faster than they should have been, lighter on their feet. Every motion carried more force than the Rosk expected. The first Rosk soldier who met them in the corridor fired his weapon at Benny. The shot went wide. Benny closed the gap in 2 strides, grabbed the soldier's weapon arm and twisted. The Rosk scales were tough. Benny's grip was tougher. The weapon clattered to the floor and the soldier followed it a moment later. Rosa Gutierrez, the geologist who had never been in combat before today, pressed herself against the corridor wall with her plasma cutter clutched to her chest. Her hands were shaking. Her eyes were wide. But when a Rosk guard charged at Pyotr from a side passage, she activated the cutter and swung it in a wide arc that melted a clean line through the wall panel beside the guard's head. The guard froze. Rosa stared at him. He dropped his weapon and ran. "Nice aim," Pyotr said. "I was aiming for his chest," Rosa whispered. "Even better." They pushed deeper into the Rosk ship. Pyotr cut through every sealed door in their path. The Rosk had designed their internal bulkheads to resist breaching tools meant for shipboard combat. They had not designed them to resist tools meant for cutting through asteroid cores. In the medical bay of the Quiet Mercy, the Livari heard the sounds growing closer. Crashing, shouting, the distinctive hiss of plasma tools and the heavier thud of bodies hitting metal floors. Sully pulled Tavi tighter against her. She did not know what was coming. She only knew that whatever it was tearing through the Rosk like they were made of paper. Grull drew his sidearm and pointed it at the doorway. His remaining soldiers formed a line. Their scales were rigid with aggression, their teeth bared. The cutting sound stopped just outside the medical bay door. Then silence. Then a voice, deep and calm, speaking in heavily accented Galactic Common, came through the metal. "This is Pyotr Volkov of the Earth vessel Nomad. We received your distress signal. We are here to help. Please step away from the door." Grull laughed. One ship, a handful of creatures from some backwater death world with cutting tools and mining gear. He kept his weapon aimed at the door and waited. 4 seconds. That is how long it took for everything Grull believed about the galaxy to fall apart. The door to the medical bay did not open. It exploded inward. Pyotr had rigged a shaped mining charge to the frame, designed to blow the panel flat without sending shrapnel into the room behind it. It was a trick used in collapsed mine rescues back on Earth. Blow the wall down, not through. The concussion alone knocked 2 Rosk soldiers to the floor. Before the dust had settled, Benny Akpen came through the opening at a dead sprint. Grull fired. The plasma bolt caught Benny across the left shoulder, burning through his jacket and searing the skin beneath. Benny did not stop. He did not slow down. He crossed the medical bay in 3 strides, his boots cracking the floor tiles with each impact, and hit Grull with a strike that started from his hip and ended at the Rosk commander's jaw. Grull weighed nearly twice what Benny weighed. It did not matter. The force of the blow lifted him off his feet and dropped him flat on his back. His sidearm skidded across the floor. His mechanical eye flickered and went dark. The remaining Rosk guards stared. Their commander, the most feared raider in this sector, was on the ground with his jaw broken, taken down by a single hit from a creature that was still standing with a smoking hole in his shoulder. Pieter stepped through the doorway. Behind him, Rosa and the rest of the boarding team filed in. None of them were untouched. Rosa had a cut across her forehead from a piece of flying debris. One of the other crew members was limping, but every single one of them was upright, armed, and staring at the Rosk guards with an expression that needed no translation in any language. The guards dropped their weapons. The medical bay fell into a strange, ringing silence. 37 Livari pressed against the far wall, their skin flickering wildly through colors that none of the humans could read. Some were glowing so brightly that the room seemed lit by living lanterns. Others had gone completely dark, their bioluminescence shut down by shock. Benny looked around the room. He saw the scanner tags on the Livari wrists, inventory numbers. His expression did not change, but something in his eyes went very cold. He reached down, picked up one of the Livari's arms gently, and snapped the tag off with his fingers. Then he moved to the next one and did the same. One by one, he removed every scanner tag in the room. He crushed them in his fist and dropped the pieces on the floor beside Grull's unconscious body. Suli watched him from where she knelt beside Tavi. This creature, this Deathworlder, had just taken a plasma bolt that would have killed a Livari instantly. He was bleeding through his jacket. The burn on his shoulder smelled like cooked meat. And he was walking through the room, carefully removing slave tags from people he had never met, handling each Livari arm with a gentleness that seemed impossible from hands that had just shattered bone. He reached Suli and Tavi. He knelt down slowly. Up close, he was enormous by Livari standards. His shoulders were wider than 2 Livari standing side by side. His hands could have wrapped around Tavi's entire torso. "Are you hurt?" he asked in slow, careful Galactic common. Tavi looked up at him. Her skin was flashing white with residual fear, but something else was creeping in. A faint, warm gold. She shook her head. Benny nodded. He reached for her wrist, paused, and looked at her first, asking permission. Tavi extended her arm. He removed the scanner tag as if he were handling glass and set it aside. "You are safe now," he said. On the Nomad's bridge, Rena was fighting her own battle. The 2 flanking Rosk ships had recovered from the mining charge blasts and were circling back. The Nomad was jammed into the lead Rosk vessel's hull like a splinter. It could not move without tearing itself free, and doing that would decompress half the Rosk ship, potentially killing everyone inside, including the Livari. Adi's voice came through the intercom. "Captain, I can reroute the Nomad's mining drill into the Rosk engine core from here. If I start it up, the vibration alone will shake their ship apart." "And ours along with it," Rena said. "Probably not. We are built tougher." "Probably is not good enough." Rena opened a wideband channel. She broadcast on every frequency the Rosk ships could receive. "This is Captain Rena Osei of the Earth vessel Nomad. Your commander is down. His boarding party has surrendered. Your lead ship has been compromised. I have 20 mining charges left and a crew that has not slept in 18 hours, which, for my species, means we are currently in our most dangerous psychological state. I suggest you withdraw." Silence on the channel. Then one of the Rosk ship captains responded. "You are bluffing. One survey ship cannot threaten 3 warships. Rena smiled. You are right. I cannot threaten 3 warships, but I have already disabled one. Your commander is unconscious on the floor, and my engineer is currently pointing a mining drill at your sister ship's engine core. If you would like to test whether I am bluffing, I invite you to come closer. A long pause. The 2 Rosk ships turned and jumped to faster-than-light speed. They did not even collect their people. Rena leaned back in her chair and let out a breath she had been holding for what felt like an hour. From the medical bay, Pieter's voice came over the intercom. Captain, the Livari are secure. We have wounded on both sides, requesting medical support. Haru, Rena said, you are up. Haru Sato grabbed his med kit and ran. Haru Sato had trained for 6 years to become a field medic. He had patched up broken bones in frozen research stations, treated radiation exposure in deep space mining accidents, and once kept a man alive for 14 hours after a hull breach with nothing but duct tape and a prayer. But he had never treated an alien before. The Livari Medical Bay was designed for Livari bodies. Every tool was too small for his hands. Every dosage chart was calibrated for creatures that weighed less than a human child. The surgical instruments looked like they had been made for dolls. He knelt beside the first injured Livari, a crew member who had taken a piece of shrapnel during the initial Rosk attack. The wound was deep but clean. In a human, he would have sealed it with bioadhesive and moved on. But Livari blood was copper-based. Their clotting worked differently. Their pain response was tied directly to their bioluminescent system, which meant the more pain they felt, the brighter they glowed, and the more energy they burned. Left untreated, a Livari could literally glow themselves to death. Suli appeared beside him. She moved quietly, the way all Livari did, as if the air itself might bruise them. Her skin was shifting between soft gold and pale green, gratitude and uncertainty. Your tools are too large for our bodies, she said. I know. Haru opened his med kit and pulled out a set of microforceps he used for removing splinters from human eyes. These should work, but I need you to guide me on dosage. I have the database files, but files are not the same as experience. Suli hesitated. Then she knelt beside him. Together they worked on the wounded crew member. Suli's hands were precise and impossibly gentle. Haru's hands were steady and strong. Where she lacked the physical ability to hold tissue in place long enough to seal it, he provided the strength. Where he lacked the knowledge of Livari biology, she provided the guidance. They saved the first patient in 12 minutes, then the second, then the third. By the 5th patient, they had developed a rhythm. Suli would diagnose. Haru would operate, she would adjust. He would follow. They did not speak more than necessary. They did not need to. Something was forming between them that went beyond language. It was the shared understanding of 2 healers working toward the same goal. Across the ship, a different kind of partnership was taking shape. Adiz Akafer had disconnected the Nomad from the Rosk hull and was assessing the damage to both vessels. The Quiet Mercy's engine was leaking radiation. Its life support was running on backup power. The hull breaches on the lower decks had been sealed by emergency force fields, but those fields were draining energy fast. Pell, the Livari chief engineer, met her in the engine room. He was small even by Livari standards, with skin that flickered in rapid patterns of orange and yellow, anxiety and focus. Adiz crouched down to his level. Her broken wrist was wrapped in a field splint that she had applied herself. She had not mentioned it to anyone. Your reactor core is still stable, she said, reading the Livari displays through her translator. But the radiation leak is coming from a cracked coolant line on the secondary loop. I can weld it shut. Pell's skin went bright white. The welding temperature required would be above 7,000 degrees. Our tools do not reach that threshold. Adiz pulled a handheld welding torch from her belt. Mine do. She showed him the tool. Pell stared at it as if she had pulled out a small sun. You carry that on your body, he whispered. Standard equipment, Adiz said. She crawled into the maintenance shaft, a space designed for Lavari bodies that she barely fit into, and welded the cracked coolant line shut in under 3 minutes. The heat was intense enough to scorch the walls around the repair. Pell watched from the shaft entrance, his skin pulsing with a color that Adiz later learned meant something close to amazement mixed with fear. When she climbed out, her face was red from the heat, her splinted wrist aching and her uniform soaked with sweat. Pell looked up at her. Your species builds tools that would destroy our ships, he said, and you use them to fix things. Adiz smiled. That is the whole idea. On the captured Rosk ship, Benny and Pieter were securing the prisoners. Grull had regained consciousness and was sitting against a wall with his hands bound, his broken jaw swelling grotesquely. He stared at Benny with his one functioning eye. Why? Grull rasped. Benny looked at him. Why what? Why come for them? They are Lavari, weak, fragile. They have nothing to offer your kind, no alliance, no trade value, no military strength. Why risk your lives for creatures that cannot even fight for themselves? Benny sat down across from him. He was quiet for a long time. The plasma burn on his shoulder had been treated by Suli with a salve that numbed the pain and promoted healing faster than anything in Haru's kit. She had applied it so carefully that Benny had barely felt her touch. Where I grew up, Benny said, there was a saying, you do not measure the size of a person by how they treat the strong. You measure them by how they treat the ones who cannot fight back. Grull stared at him. The concept seemed to genuinely confuse him. That is weakness, Grull said. No, Benny said. That is the reason you are sitting on the floor with your jaw broken, and I am the one standing. He stood up and walked away. Behind him, Grull's remaining eye followed him out of the room, filled with something the Rosk had very little experience with. Fear of something he did not understand. 3 weeks after the rescue, Rena Osai sat in a chair that was too small for her inside a chamber that was too bright for human eyes. The Galactic Union Tribunal Hall on Station Orova had been designed for species that preferred soft lighting and open space. For Rena, it felt like sitting inside a light bulb. 7 tribunal members sat behind a curved bench that stretched across the front of the hall. Each one represented a different Union species. None of them came from anything worse than a Class 6 world. To them, a strong breeze was dangerous weather. A steep hill was a geological hazard. The idea of a planet where the ground itself could split open and swallow cities was the stuff of nightmares. And sitting in front of them was a woman from that exact kind of planet, wearing a borrowed uniform because her original one had been destroyed during a ship-to-ship ramming maneuver. The lead tribunal member, a tall VC with translucent skin and 4 slender arms, opened the proceedings. Captain Osai, you are not charged with any crime. This inquiry is to determine the legal classification of your actions regarding the rescue of the Lavari vessel Quiet Mercy. Understood, Rena said. You are not military personnel. No. Not licensed security contractors. No. Not operating under any defense mandate from the Galactic Union or any member state. No. The VC paused. Then under what authority did you engage in armed combat with the Rosk marauders? Rena looked at the tribunal. 7 species, 7 worlds, 7 different evolutionary histories that had produced civilizations built on caution, negotiation, and avoidance of conflict. She understood why the question confused them. On their worlds, you did not run toward danger. You calculated risk. You waited for the proper authorities. You filed reports. We heard a distress signal, Rena said. We were the only ones close enough to respond, so we responded. With mining equipment. With what we had. The VC exchanged a look with the other tribunal members. A Pelori judge, small and covered in soft brown fur, leaned forward. Captain Osai, We have reviewed the sensor logs from the incident. Your ship sustained critical damage during the engagement. Several of your crew were injured. One of your crew took a direct plasma hit and continued fighting. Can you explain why your people did not retreat when it became clear you were outmatched? Rena thought about it. She thought about Benny charging across that room with his shoulder on fire. She thought about Rosa swinging a plasma cutter at a Rosk guard with shaking hands. She thought about Fumiko Tanaka, the ship's cook, who had spent the entire battle ferrying medical supplies between the two ships through a corridor open to vacuum, wearing nothing but a standard emergency suit. We were not outmatched, Rena said simply. We just had different tools. The tribunal called Doran as a witness. The Livari captain walked to the center of the hall, his skin glowing in calm, steady patterns. He had prepared a formal statement, translated into Galactic Common. The humans who saved my crew are not soldiers, Doran said. They are surveyors, scientists, engineers, a cook, a medic who had never treated a non-human patient in his life. They came to us with rock-cutting tools and homemade explosives, and they fought creatures twice their number without hesitation. He paused. His skin shifted to that deep, unnamed gold that Sully had shown in the medical bay. But that is not what I want the tribunal to remember. What I want you to remember is what happened after the fight. Their medic sat with our wounded for 18 hours, learning our biology in real time so he could save lives. Their engineer crawled into spaces too small for her body to fix our ship with tools hot enough to melt our walls. Their security officer removed slave tags from my crew one at a time, by hand, with a gentleness I have never seen from any species, let alone one from a death world. Doran looked directly at the tribunal. Every file in the Union database describes Deathworlders by what makes them dangerous, their gravity tolerance, their pain threshold, their pursuit endurance, but none of those files describe what I saw. I saw people who were afraid and went forward anyway. I saw people who were injured and treated our wounded before their own. I saw a species that does not protect others because it is logical or profitable. They protect others because something inside them, something deeper than thought, will not allow them to do anything else. The hall was silent. The tribunal ruled in the humans' favor. No charges, no restrictions, and buried in the final page of the ruling was a small amendment to Galactic Union communication protocols. The Deathworld channel, for decades classified as a warning frequency, was officially reclassified. Its automated message, which had always read anything that responds to this channel originates from a Class 12 hostile environment world. Proceed with extreme caution, was changed. The new message read, this channel is monitored by species from high-gravity, high-threat worlds. They have answered before. They will answer again. On the rebuilt Quiet Mercy, Sully sat alone in the medical bay, writing. She had been working on a research paper about human physiology, their dense bones, their redundant organs, their ability to continue functioning through injuries that would kill most species instantly, but she kept stopping to add notes in the margins. Notes about a man who knelt down and asked permission before touching a stranger's wrist, about an engineer who broke her own bones and did not mention it because there were others to help first, about a medic who learned an entirely new biology overnight because lives depended on it. She wrote the final line of her paper slowly. Every study of Deathworld biology asks the same question. What makes them survive? I believe we have been asking the wrong question. The right question is not what makes them survive. It is what makes them come back for others. I do not yet have the answer, but I know this much. When we called into the dark, they answered. Not because they had to, because they could not imagine doing anything else. She saved the document and dimmed the lights. Outside the viewport, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere among them, the Deathworld channel hummed softly, no longer a warning. A promise,